Have you noticed those empty shelves at your local grocery store lately? It's not just you. According to recent supply chain reports, we're facing the worst food shortages since 2020. Prices have already jumped 12% in just the last quarter, and experts are warning it's about to get much worse. Global shipping disruptions are at a 5-year high, with container costs tripling since December. Add in extreme weather events that have devastated crops in key growing regions worldwide, and you've got the perfect storm, one that's already hitting your local store. In this video, I'll reveal the 10 grocery items that will vanish from shelves before the end of March 2025. These aren't just random guesses. They're based on current inventory levels, supplier warnings, and industry analyst reports from February. Stock up on these items now before it's too late, especially number 7. That one shocked even me. Let's dive in before these essentials disappear from your shopping cart forever. Number 1. Olive oil. Let's start with olive oil. If you've been shopping lately, you've probably noticed prices skyrocketing. Here's why. The Mediterranean region just experienced its worst olive harvest in decades. Spain and Italy, which produce over 60% of the world's olive oil, are in crisis mode. Recent reports from the International Olive Council show production dropped by a staggering 35% compared to last year. What's causing this? Extreme heat waves last summer literally cooked olives on the branches in some Spanish regions, where temperatures hit 115 degrees Fahrenheit for weeks. Then came unexpected autumn floods in Italy, damaging even more crops. One Italian farmer shared in a recent interview, "In 40 years, I've never seen anything like this. Our trees are stressed and producing fewer olives with less oil content." This isn't just about quantity, it's about quality too. Extra virgin olive oil will be the hardest to find because it requires perfect olives. The bottles you do find will cost you. Prices have already jumped 45% since November, and industry experts predict another 30% increase by mid-March. What can you do? If you rely on olive oil for cooking, grab a few bottles now, especially if you prefer extra virgin. For alternatives, consider avocado oil for high-heat cooking or walnut oil for salad dressings. Grapeseed oil works well too, though its prices are starting to climb as people switch over. Remember, this shortage won't last forever, but we're looking at least 6 to 8 months before new harvests hit the market. Stock up now while you still can. Number 2. Cocoa products. Remember when a chocolate bar was just a cheap treat? Those days are long gone. Cocoa prices have exploded to all-time highs, up 78% since last year, and it's about to get much worse. West Africa, where 70% of the world's cocoa comes from, is facing its worst growing season in decades. Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire reported a 30% drop in production just last month. The trees are struggling with a deadly combination of aging plants, extreme heat, and a fungal disease called swollen shoot virus that's destroying entire farms. What does this mean for your chocolate fix? Major companies like Hershey's and Nestle have already started shrinking their products while raising prices. That 2 chocolate bar from last year, it's now 2 chocolate bars from last year. It's now 3.50 and smaller. But here's what store managers aren't telling you. By mid-March, many chocolate products won't be available at any price. The hardest items to find will be high-quality dark chocolate, cocoa powder for baking, and those special seasonal treats for Easter. Companies are prioritizing their best sellers and cutting production on everything else. Just last week, a major supplier told retailers to expect only 40% of their normal chocolate inventory by month's end. One store manager I spoke with said they're already limiting purchases to 2 chocolate items per customer in some locations. Stock up now on your favorite chocolate bars, cocoa powder, and baking chips. They store well in cool, dry places for months. Or consider alternatives like carob products, which taste similar but come from a completely different plant that isn't facing these shortages. The chocolate emergency is real, folks. Don't wait until the shelves are empty. Number 3. Certain citrus fruits. Let's talk about citrus fruits. Your morning glass of orange juice. It might soon become a luxury. Florida, one of the largest producers of oranges in the U.S., is facing its worst citrus harvest in over 70 years. A combination of hurricanes, citrus greening disease, and unpredictable weather has devastated crops. In fact, orange production is down by more than 60% compared to just 5 years ago. This isn't just about oranges, either. Grapefruits, lemons, and limes are also feeling the pinch. Brazil, another major citrus producer, is dealing with its own set of challenges, including drought and rising production costs. What does this mean for you? Citrus prices are already climbing, and availability is becoming spotty. By March, you might find it harder to get your hands on fresh oranges, grapefruits, or even bottled orange juice. What can you do? Stock up on frozen orange juice concentrate. It lasts longer and can be a great backup. For fresh citrus, consider buying in bulk and juicing or freezing the extras. And if you're a fan of citrus zest for baking, now's the time to stock up on those little bottles of lemon or orange extract. They'll last for years. Florida's citrus production has hit a 90-year low this season, and it's not just bad luck, it's a full-blown crisis. 3 hurricanes devastated the region's groves, and according to the latest USDA report, orange harvests are down 63% compared to last year. But here's the kicker. These storms hit during the critical flowering period, meaning recovery could take years, not months. And it's not just Florida. Spain and Italy, which supply most of Europe's citrus, suffered through their hottest winter on record. Lemon production has collapsed by nearly half. Those bright yellow Meyer lemons you love for baking, they'll be among the first to vanish. Importers are already prioritizing commercial customers over grocery stores, so restaurants might have lemons while your local market has empty bins. Number 4, coffee. Let's talk about coffee, the lifeblood of mornings for millions of us. Bad news, coffee lovers. Your daily ritual is in serious trouble. Recent reports from the International Coffee Organization show global coffee production has hit its lowest point in 8 years. Brazilian farms, which supply 40% of the world's coffee, are struggling with the worst drought in decades. Satellite imagery from January shows moisture levels in key, growing regions at critical lows. Some farmers are reporting soil conditions so dry that young coffee plants aren't surviving at all, meaning this shortage could extend well beyond 2025. It's not just Brazil. Colombia's coffee farmers faced devastating floods last month, destroying nearly 30% of their crops. And in Vietnam, labor shortages mean beans are literally rotting on the trees. Local agricultural officials say they're short about 40,000 workers this season alone. The pandemic created a massive shift in the labor market that's still affecting farming regions worldwide. Climate change is hitting coffee particularly hard. Coffee plants are incredibly sensitive to temperature changes. Even a 1 to 2 degree increase can dramatically affect yield and quality. A research study published last month found that 60% of wild coffee species are now facing extinction due to changing climate patterns. This isn't just bad for your morning cup. It's devastating for the 125 million people worldwide who depend on coffee for their livelihood. Major retailers have already started limiting purchases to 2 bags per customer. Starbucks just announced price increases averaging 18% starting next week. Those specialty beans from your favorite local roaster? They're getting hit the hardest. Small roasters can't compete with the purchasing power of major corporations when supplies get tight. The shortage is hitting Arabica beans first, the smoother, less bitter coffee most people prefer. Experts predict that by mid-March, many grocery stores will be completely out of premium coffee options. Robusta beans, which have a stronger, more bitter taste, might still be available, but at double their normal price. Even instant coffee, which typically uses lower-grade beans, is expected to see significant price jumps by early April. What can you do? If you're a coffee drinker, grab your favorite beans now and store them in your freezer. They'll stay fresh for months. Just make sure to keep them in an airtight container to prevent moisture damage. Consider switching to tea temporarily. Tea production hasn't been hit nearly as hard this year. If you're really desperate, chicory root has historically been used as a coffee alternative during shortages. It's worth stocking some just in case. Don't wait until your last bag is empty. Restocking won't be an option. Number 5, seafood options. Let's talk seafood. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but your fish tacos might be in serious trouble. The National Oceanic Agency just reported the strictest seasonal fishing restrictions in 15 years. These aren't just routine regulations. They're emergency measures to prevent the complete collapse of certain fish populations. Scientists monitoring ocean temperatures found alarming changes in migration patterns, pushing many species into unfamiliar territories where traditional fishing methods can't reach them. Wild-caught salmon is first on the chopping block. Alaska's fisheries announced a 60% reduction in permits for March, citing dangerously low population counts. Those beautiful pink fillets you love? Expect them to vanish from seafood counters by mid-March. What's really concerning is that this isn't just a temporary blip. Salmon have faced consecutive years of declining spawning numbers. The Columbia River Basin recorded its lowest salmon return in 3 decades, with only 38% of expected fish making it back to breeding grounds. That's why prices jumped nearly 30% in February alone, and stores are already limiting purchases to 2 packages per customer in some regions. It gets worse for shrimp lovers. The Gulf Coast is facing a perfect storm of problems. Water temperatures rose 3 degrees above normal this winter, disrupting breeding patterns. A massive shipping container spill off Louisiana in January contaminated key harvesting areas. The result? Shrimp prices have already jumped 40% since February, and suppliers can't keep up with demand. I spoke with a restaurant owner in New Orleans who told me her supplier warned her to expect shrimp the size of your thumbnail by April, if she can get them at all. The smaller sizes are all that's left, as larger, premium shrimp become nearly impossible to source. What can you do? Stock up on frozen seafood now. It's often flash frozen at peak freshness and can last for months. Consider alternative seafood options like sardines or mackerel, which are more sustainable and less affected by current shortages. If you're a fan of shrimp, buy in bulk and freeze it while it's still available. If seafood is a staple in your home, consider stocking your freezer now while supplies last. One clever hack: check international grocery stores, which often source from different supply chains than major supermarkets and might still have inventory when bigger chains run out. Remember, seafood freezes surprisingly well. Properly wrapped fish can last 4 to 6 months without losing quality. Number 6. Rice. Why your favorite rice might vanish soon. Imagine stepping into your usual grocery store, heading straight for your favorite bag of jasmine or basmati rice, only to find an empty shelf. A small sign reads, "Temporarily out of stock." You glance around in confusion. Rice, a staple food for billions, suddenly isn't as easy to get as it used to be. You might even think, did I miss something? Why is rice becoming harder to find? Well, you're not imagining it. The world is experiencing one of the most significant rice shortages in decades, and it's impacting everything from grocery store shelves to the cost of your favorite restaurant meals. But what's causing this crisis? And more importantly, what can you do about it? Rice is the staple food for over half of the world's population. Yet, in the past few years, a combination of factors has triggered a supply crunch that has driven prices to their highest levels in nearly 15 years. In 2023, the global rice shortfall reached 8.5 million metric tons, the biggest deficit since 2004. For comparison, that's like the entire population of the United States losing access to rice for a year. So what's causing this crisis? A perfect storm of climate change, extreme weather events, government export restrictions, and supply chain disruptions has made it harder than ever for countries to grow, store, and trade rice. In some regions, floods have wiped out entire harvests. In others, heat waves and droughts have reduced yields by 30% or more. Farmers who rely on seasonal rains are finding their crops struggling to survive in harsher conditions, leading to massive supply shortages. As rice supplies shrink, major rice-producing countries are hoarding their stockpiles to protect their own people. The biggest example? India, the world's largest rice exporter, has restricted exports multiple times since 2022 to stabilize its domestic food prices. Back in July 2023, India banned the export of non-basmati white rice, causing a panic in countries that rely on Indian rice imports, like the Philippines, Indonesia, and even parts of the US. As a result, rice prices surged by as much as 15 to 20% overnight. Number 7. Specialty flours. Why are they disappearing from shelves? Picture this. You're all set to bake your favorite gluten-free bread or that almond flour banana bread everyone raves about. You pull out your shopping list, head to the grocery store, and bam, the specialty flour section is practically wiped out. No almond flour, coconut flour is overpriced, and even oat flour is looking scarce. Sound familiar? You're not alone. Specialty flours are vanishing from store shelves, and if you rely on them, you might want to start stocking up. Let's start with the elephant in the room: supply chain issues. We've been hearing about supply chain disruptions for years now. first with the pandemic, then global shipping delays, and now extreme weather. But what does this have to do with flour? A lot. Specialty flours rely on specific raw ingredients that are sourced globally. Almond flour, for instance, depends heavily on almond production in California, which has been hit by severe droughts. Coconut flour is imported from tropical regions where climate changes, rising costs, and transportation delays have led to unpredictable supply. The problem isn't just about getting these ingredients. It's about getting them to your local store on time and at a price that won't make you wince. On top of that, wheat shortages are pushing up the cost of all flour-based products, including specialty flours. With wheat prices fluctuating due to poor harvests in key regions like the US and Ukraine, alternative flours, once considered niche, are now in even higher demand. This means fewer supplies to go around and, you guessed it, higher prices. What can you do? Stock up now on your favorite specialty flours. They have a long shelf life if stored properly in airtight containers. Consider bulk buying from online retailers or wholesale clubs to lock in lower prices before they rise further. Experiment with alternative flours that might still be available, like chickpea flour or cassava flour. But here's the kicker. Production isn't growing at the same speed. This means more people want specialty flours than there are products available, making shortages inevitable. Oat flour, once considered a budget-friendly alternative, has surged in popularity due to its mild flavor and gluten-free status. But increased demand means suppliers can't keep up. The same goes for cassava and chickpea flour, which have become baking staples in many plant-based and gluten-free diets. When demand outstrips supply, even big brands struggle to keep up. Number 8. Meat cuts. Next up is something that'll hit hard if you're planning any special meals. Certain meat cuts are vanishing fast. Remember when you could walk into any store and grab whatever cut you wanted? Those days are ending. Meat processing costs have jumped 17% since January, and it's crushing smaller processors. 3 major facilities in the Midwest shut down last month alone. The biggest problem? Labor shortages. Processing plants are operating at just 72% capacity because they can't find enough workers. That's down from 88% last year. What's disappearing first? Prime ribeye steaks and beef tenderloin will be nearly impossible to find. Current inventory is down 43% compared to this time last year. If you're planning a special dinner, buy and freeze these cuts now. Pork shoulder is another casualty. It's become incredibly popular for smoking and slow cooking, but supply can't keep up with demand. Warehouse stocks dropped by over half in just 8 weeks. Surprisingly, chicken wings are facing shortages too. With March Madness and spring gatherings coming up, demand is skyrocketing while production struggles. Industry analysts predict prices will double by mid-March if things don't improve. Your best bet? Consider less popular cuts like chuck roast, pork loin, or chicken thighs. They're more readily available and often cheaper. Visit local butchers who source directly from nearby farms. They're seeing fewer disruptions than major supply chains. Don't say I didn't warn you when you're staring at empty meat cases next month. The time to act is now. Number 9. Dairy alternatives. Let's talk about dairy alternatives. They're flying off shelves, and production just can't keep up. Remember when oat milk was everywhere? Those days are ending fast. Several major plant-based milk producers reported manufacturing facility shutdowns in January due to equipment shortages. Parts needed for specialized processing machines are backordered until June, and that's if shipping improves. Almond milk is hit hardest. California's drought devastated almond crops, with yields down 31% compared to last year. Farmers are warning that the February harvest was the worst in a decade. One producer told Bloomberg, "We're allocating what little we have to our biggest customers first." Oat milk isn't safe either. 3 of the 5 largest oat milk brands have already announced they're pausing production of certain flavors to focus on their basic varieties. The organic versions? Those will disappear first. And it's not just milk alternatives. Plant-based yogurts and cheeses are vanishing too. The specialized cultures needed for fermentation are in critically short supply after a key European supplier faced contamination issues. What's driving this? Demand is absolutely exploding. Plant-based dairy sales jumped 27% in the last quarter alone, while production capacity only grew by 8%. The math just doesn't work. If you depend on these products, especially for allergies or dietary needs, Stock up now while you still can. Grab shelf-stable versions when possible, and maybe consider learning to make your own oat milk. It's easier than you think, and you'll thank me in April when store shelves are empty. Well, there you have it. These 10 grocery items are already vanishing from stores and will be completely gone by the end of March. From olive oil to cocoa, citrus to coffee, and those dairy alternatives that so many depend on. I'm not telling you this to panic you. I'm sharing it so you can prepare. Stock up smartly on these essentials now, especially if they're staples in your household. Consider alternatives where possible. This might be the perfect time to try new recipes or brands you haven't considered before. The good news? These shortages won't last forever, but being prepared will save you stress, time, and money in the coming months. If this information helped you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more practical advice on navigating today's challenging consumer landscape. Drop a comment below with any items you've already noticed disappearing in your area. Stay prepared, shop smart, and I'll see you in the next video.